The anxiety is coming from the uncertainty about when is that going to end, but nobody can tell them, and I think that is unsettling.
Hey guys, welcome back. Today, I just want to touch on something that has been deeply disturbing me ever since the beginning of this pandemic. Schools. Why don't they want our kids back in school? I would like a legitimate answer. A lot has changed as far as what we know about the coronavirus, how it transfers, all that, since the beginning. So obviously, things are going to change as time goes on. Things are going to, be different than what we may have expected. But after just going through hours and hours and hours and hours of direct testimony and statements from people from the CDC, Dr. Fauci, I never heard a legitimate reason why kids are not back in school full time. I have not heard one good reason. My daughter is 5 years old, so she should be starting school in August. I'm not sure what other states do. I think they start, a lot start in September, but here in Arizona, we start in August where it's hot as fuck. It's literally blistering outside, usually 120 degree weather, but that's when we start school. Through watching all this, obviously I know Ember's time's coming up to go to school, and I've been watching this fucking catastrophe. I'm watching a lot of teachers act like they don't want to teach. It makes me nervous. I'm contemplating homeschooling if things aren't normal by August, because I'm not going to put my child through having to have barriers in the classroom, not having recess. Why would they even be there if they're not allowed to play together, talk to each other? It's just weird. And there's nothing really behind it. In mid-February of 2020, it was confirmed multiple times. Kids are less susceptible. They're less than 1% typically of the people who get it. And when they get it, it's not bad. We knew that. We knew that. They knew that. And yet there was still talks of shutting schools down. So by March, COVID had gotten into a few schools, but they were in New York, so is that really the standard we're going by? Anyways, even Andrew Cuomo was slightly against closing the schools at first and kind of put it off a little. But then people died, so of course, Democrats always give in to intimidation, and if enough people's home to do something, they'll panic and do it. So he shut down the schools, but he did make it clear, like everybody else who's practical, that the parents of these children are going to struggle a lot.
We were reluctant to close the schools, but especially because of concerns about childcare and student meals. But the schools are closed right now. Have those issues been resolved?
Well, I closed the schools yesterday. New York City, Nassau, Suffolk, and Westchester, the main density of our cases. But I closed them with the condition that those local governments come up with a child care plan. Because again, if you follow the reasoning I laid out, your crisis is in the hospitals. That is what is going to happen. The crisis of hospital capacity. You close schools, nurses don't come to work, healthcare workers don't come to work. Now you have a real problem. So I have never had an issue with closing the schools.
A lot of parents are nurses, a lot of parents are doctors, a lot of parents have essential jobs. I hate that term, because if you have a job, you have it for a reason, it's essential. There's no one there to watch the kids in a lot of cases, and parents have to work. There's already a pandemic with mass unemployment, and you should make them have to lose their jobs because they have to watch their kids because the teachers won't do their jobs. By mid-March, a bunch of states had already shut down all their schools, and by the end of March, all schools were shut down. By mid-March, half of the country's students were affected by it. That's insane. It was first mentioned in February, towards the end of February 2020, that the CDC said, if this thing does become a pandemic, which we're pretty sure it will, then there's, we're going to have to think of alternatives for school. But they never said why.
During a press call Tuesday, the director of the CDC's National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases laid out steps schools and businesses might take if the coronavirus becomes an epidemic in the U.S. For example, she said schools could divide students into smaller groups or hold classes online.
Rand Paul, through all of this, is one of the only people who really grilled Dr. Fauci, and I love him for that. I love Rand Paul. He got Dr. Fauci to admit that a lot of the things he says and recommends are just mere guesses, like no evidence behind them type of guesses.
Quickly, Senator Paul, I agree with a lot of what you say about, this idea about people having to put their opinions out without data. And sometimes you have to make extrapolations because you're in a position where you need to at least give some sort of recommendation.
There was a lot of struggles, and I'm sure many of you remember this. There's a lot of kids, families out there who do not have internet. So fuck them, I guess. Several weeks or even months sometimes to get everything they needed to get back to school. Or in some cases, people had to buy internet or had to buy, laptop, all these things. And it's just, when we're going through a pandemic, if it's as bad as these people say, why are we taxing everybody financially the most we can? How does that make sense?
Hundreds of laptops and hotspots to students who still haven't been able to log on.
I mean, this is already overwhelming, and not having something to teach their kids, it's pretty bad.
A survey by Colorado's Department of Education found access to broadband and Wi-Fi is the biggest need for more than half of school districts. Back to that education department survey, it turns out the top concern, even more than anything technical, was a lack of emotional support for students and families who are now under even more stress.
On July 31st of 2020, the CDC actually agreed fully, word for word, with Trump's idea of how to reopen schools safely.
We've got school decision-making tool for parents, caregivers, and guardians. Are these all parts of the president's plan to safely reopen schools?
Yes.
Have you been involved in developing that with President Trump?
Yes.
Do you think that schools should safely reopen this fall with in-person learning?
Yes, I think it's important to realize that it's in the public health best interest of K through 12 students to get back in face-to-face learning. There's really very significant public health consequences of the school closure. So,
well, for example, they lack the ability to detect child abuse that occurs and is detected often in schools. Do you know how much child abuse will not be detected if children aren't returning to the school?
Clearly, we're seeing less reporting of it, and again, I think it's a direct consequence of the school closures. Well, 7.1 million kids get their mental health service in schools. They get nutritional support, as we mentioned, from schools. We're seeing an increase in drug use disorder as well as suicide in the adolescents individuals. So I do think it's really important to realize it's not public health versus the economy about school opening. It's public health versus public health of the K through 12s to get these schools open.
Before schools went back in session in like August and September of 2020, kids were scared. They did not want to wear masks because they feel like it's harder to breathe, which you can look up yourself, all the side effects of long-term mask wearing, and now they want you to wear too. Just in general, it was really sad to see a lot of these little kids genuinely terrified that they might die or make one of their parents die because of all the brainwashing that happened around coronavirus. They're terrified to go to school. They're terrified to interact with anybody because the media scared them.
This boy Layton is a little overwhelmed to head back to school during a pandemic.
I want to go back to school without a mask.
For Layton, a soon-to-be first grader, he's worried about having to wear a mask all day. He says they are hot and uncomfortable, and that is scary to him. She worries about the virus spreading.
I'm scared because I don't want to catch it.
Olivia has practiced social distancing this summer and other ways to avoid the virus and hopes to encourage her friends at school to do the same.
Always keep your mask on and wash your hands.
Ellie,
these kids, we're going to see, and not that long, just how fucked up this generation of kids is, and I feel very bad for them. So in October 2020, with more data that we've gotten over time, it was confirmed that kids, teenagers, they are making up now 10% of the positive cases in the United States. But they're mostly mild. And it's only because they, for some reason, they get it like 2 times more likely than an adult. This is a lot less severe.
Kids. New research finding that children are now making up a larger number of positive infections, and it started just a few weeks ago.
But you can't just blame it on schools.
Information of kids in COVID-19 is coming from the American Academy of Pediatrics. It reports that children of all ages now make up 10% of all cases in the U.S. That is up from 2% in April. While we saw the rise in September, experts say you can't just blame schools for the change in infection rates. This comes as some states relax restrictions and many people report pandemic fatigue.
So if that's true, and we just all get over it, like, you know, everyone always did for years about school, everyone just kind of assumes there's going to be a few sick kids in the beginning of the school year because a bunch of people are getting together, and it's just bound to happen. Germs spread. So why is this, if it's mild for children, so horrible? People are thinking way too far into it because they think they're just that self-important. And by these people, I mean teachers.
We became beyond flexible in all of this. And to say that we're supposed to put our lives in harm in order to make that happen, to be in person, when it could be done through a computer.
Educators are crucial to our development in the United States, in my opinion. But the teachers we have right now, I don't know if it's the generation they were born in, or just like being in an echo chamber of your own thoughts, but they really, really think way too highly of themselves. They really think they're way more important. How are you any more important than someone's grandma, someone's brother, someone's sister, someone's cousin, someone's mom, dad, little sister, little brother? I just don't understand why they are so up on this pedestal of like, we are the shit, we are the most important, we matter over everybody. That is the vibe they give off. They're so self-pitying in all of this, when it's like literal teenagers work at grocery stores during this pandemic and they have more balls than these teachers. In November of 2020, the CDC recommended in-person learning because it is proven to be better for children. Duh. If you didn't already know that and you're an educator, please stop being an educator.
Or what we're doing for commercial closures. For example, as was mentioned, last spring, CDC did not recommend school closures. Nor did we recommend their closures today. I will say back in the spring there was limited data. Today there's extensive data that we've gathered over the last 2 to 3 months to confirm that K through 12 schools can operate with face-to-face learning, and they can do it safely and they can do it responsibly. The infections that we've identified in schools when they've been evaluated were not acquired in schools. The truth is, for kids K through 12, one of the safest places they can be, from our perspective, is to remain in school. And it would be counterproductive from my point of view, from a public health point of view, just in containing the epidemic, if there was an emotional response to say, let's close the schools.
And all over the country, you have the teachers union trying to get their teachers out of having to go back into work. They want to keep, working from home and just doing it all online. They claim that's not what they want, but it's what they're literally going out and fighting for. There's been so many instances of teachers getting caught yelling at kids, insulting kids, just talking down to them, being condescending, saying inappropriate things, racist things sometimes. I think a lot of parents might have their eyes open. I was in high school a mere 9 to 10 years ago. I can't do math right now. And I know my teachers were shit, and I know my parents never believed me. So if this is maybe what we need for parents to see, I'm okay with this aspect of it, because teachers abuse their roles or get lazy in their roles or manipulate children a lot of the time, and no one believes them because they're teachers, So in a press briefing, Jen Psaki said that Biden was aiming for every school to be open 1 day a week. And everyone was kind of like, what? Really? That's it. 1 day a week.
But why is the administration setting the bar at 1 day a week? Why not go higher?
Well,
Certainly, we are not planning to celebrate at 100 days if we reach that goal. That is our own effort to make set our own markings, set an bold and ambitious agenda for how we're going to measure ourselves and progress. But we certainly hope to build from that, even at 100 days. And from there, our objective, the president's objectives, is for all schools to reopen, to stay open, to be open 5 days a week, for kids to be learning. That's what our focus is on. This is simply a goal for 100 days.
So, Ken, a lot of schools are already doing that. And for working parents, 1 day a week doesn't help a whole lot.
And so for once, the press actually asked Biden a question that was like important to the country. Amazing. And he said that must have been miscommunication because he intends on more than that. And, it wasn't what he wants.
Had set a goal to open the majority of schools in your first 100 days. You're now saying that means those schools may only be open for at least 1 day a week.
No, that's not true. That's what was reported. That's not true. It was a mistake in the communication. What I'm talking about is I said opening the majority of schools in K through 8th grade.
So Jen Psaki had to circle back and contradict herself.
Now the goal is K through 8. 5 days a week. What is this realistic, or are we going to see the majority of schools in this country open by April?
That's our goal. That's our objective. That's our plan, John. There have been some important steps in the last week, including these CDC guidelines that give clear science-based guidelines for school districts on a range of steps they can take to be safe.
So I think most of us saw the leaked Zoom call. I think it was a Zoom call. That the school board was on, and they all ended up resigning because they thought they were having a private conversation. They weren't. And they said a lot of inappropriate shit, just really condescending and mean to the parents.
Yeah. If you're gonna call me out, I'm gonna you up. You don't know what we do behind the scenes, and it's really unfortunate that they want to pick on us because they want their babysitters back. Right. Oh, we have the meeting open to the public right now. Nuh-uh.
We send them there to make them smarter and have them learn things, grow as people. So for them to imply it's just for babysitting purposes, it says a lot about where I think a lot of teachers' mindsets are at right now. They really think that parents are just being obnoxious. When it's like, you went to school to get this job, what did you expect people to want from you? Except but to teach their children. That's literally what you signed up to do. So during the first half of the pandemic, when things were still kind of up in the air and school started and then it shut down, suicide rates actually dropped 14%. But then during the second wave, it went up 16%. Almost half of those suicides were teenagers. It's just a very short-term side effect we're seeing so far of the impact that this is going to have on these kids and their futures. Self-harm's at an all-time high, suicides, it's not looking good. And all these little kids will never get social skills because, according to the government and every crazy liberal that wants to yell at someone, there's 6 feet apart, no interaction, social distancing. There's no way that these kids' social skills are ever gonna really recuperate when those are very important developmental years. Your brain changes a lot in certain years, and it's very crucial. The things that happen in that time, they really shape you as a person. So there's gonna be a few years where I think there's going to be some psychopaths walking the streets, and it's really it's kind of sad because it's not going to be their fault. I can't imagine being put through what these kids are being put through. I was a very depressed teenager, and I can't imagine going through this. I don't know how it would have turned out for me. It's dark, and these teachers are being selfish. Honestly, I think they're being completely selfish. They think they are so much more important than anybody else. I just don't understand. I would like to know what you guys think. Why do you think they won't put our kids back in school? Why do you think they are pushing it back so much? You think it's to give other countries maybe an edge over us because our kids will be less educated than theirs because the other countries have gone back to school, fully have been in school. Are they purposely making this generation of children fucked up or stupid? It's gonna be interesting to see what comes of it. Kind of scary. Let me know your thoughts below. Please give this video a like if you did indeed like it. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.